So we recently got our hands on this new game called Circus of TimTim on the PS5, and let me tell you, it's quite an experience. Thank you so much for the review, Key, it means a lot, and hopefully I don't let you down. Full disclaimer, Firecrotch played the game to completion, not me. I can only write this script off of what I learned from him, and I know some were looking forward to his review, but we have an obligation to review this in a timely manner, and sadly that time is almost up. If you want something done right, you know. The game is a mix of horror and stealth, and while it seems pretty simple, the atmosphere is downright terrifying. First off, the game is set in this creepy rundown circus. You play as one of two siblings trying to find lost items with a metal detector. The circus is filled with all sorts of eerie sounds and visuals that really set the mood, which complements the graphics that are surprisingly good, making everything look both beautiful and horrifying at the same time, which is impressive for a two-developer team, and I gotta give them a lot of props for that. But let's talk about the enemies. The main antagonist is TimTim, a giant mutated baby thing, creepier than he sounds, trust me. He's always watching, always listening. The game does a good job of making you feel like you're never truly safe. Timmy can hear almost everything, so you have to be super careful about the noise that you make. Even stepping on a rubber duck can give away your position, so Rubber Ducky truly isn't the one this time around. Speaking of noise, the game has a lot of things that can cause it. Your metal detector beeps when it finds something, which can attract enemies, and most likely will if we're being honest. There are also other objects scattered around that can make noise if you interact with them, even on accident. It's a constant balancing act of trying to find what you need without drawing too much attention to yourself, but thankfully you can utilize that same noise as a distraction if you play your cards right. A risk versus reward kind of decision has to be made. The tickets in the game are another thing that needs taken into consideration, similar to games such as Slender: The Arrival. You need to collect these golden tickets. They're hidden all over the circus, and finding them can be quite a challenge, especially when jump scares made FC want to pee himself the entire time. Kinda hard to focus that way, I do have to say. The tickets add an extra layer of strategy, as you have to decide whether it's worth the risk to go after one even if it means making noise and potentially getting caught, which is why the game's length can vary depending on the playthrough. What took FC an hour the first time could take me 20 minutes the second, all depending on factors that feel outside of our control. Mechanically, the game is pretty straightforward. You move around with the joystick, use the metal detector to find items, and interact with objects using simple button presses. There's no complex combat system here, no meaningless crafting, nothing that you really don't want to do in these kind of games. It's all about stealth and strategy, which makes it very accessible to a wide range of players, even if these kinds of games ain't usually your thing, and it's extremely nice to see. But don't let the simple mechanics fool you. The game is still incredibly tense and can scare the pants off of you if you aren't paying attention. The sound design is particularly effective, with every creak and groan of the circus adding to the sense of dread. The developers really nailed the atmosphere, making you feel like you're constantly being watched, which I mean, you pretty much are, don't get me wrong. And whenever you aren't being watched, you're being heard and never truly safe. One of the most nerve-wracking parts of the game is when you have to hide from TimTim. If he hears you, you have to quickly find a hiding spot and stay quiet until he goes away. Or if you have balls of steel, you can try and outrun him. These moments are incredibly tense, as you can hear him getting closer and closer and you never know if he's going to find you. The game also has a few other enemies besides TimTim. There are creepy clowns and other circus performers that roam around, each with their own unique behaviors and patterns. Some of them are more sensitive to noise, while others have better vision. Them all having a specific sense that is heightened leaves them all feeling varied while also not feeling unfair. Learning how to deal with each type of enemy is key to surviving and helps the game from feeling too repetitive as you look for items and avoid Tim throughout. So yeah, Circus of TimTim is a charming horror game that combines simple mechanics with a truly terrifying atmosphere. The enemies are well designed and add a lot of tension to the gameplay and even if the variety is technically limited when put up to the game's runtime, there are just the right amount. The noise mechanics and the need to collect tickets add layers of strategy that keep things interesting even if they aren't the most original things to format a horror game around, which is why I said too repetitive earlier instead of not repetitive at all. It sadly does feel kinda repetitive at times, especially if you don't run into the more unique enemies at a decent pace, and that may throw some people off. But given that it's a short game made by 2 developers with a lot of love behind it, the chance of that repetition truly being an issue isn't very high. Just felt like I should point it out. It's definitely a personal preference type of situation. Also, the hearing of enemies can feel a bit too superhuman sometimes too. They react too quickly at moments that can make the game a little challenging, but it's also not that big of a deal either. That's what I meant by risk-reward earlier. Sometimes good plans may have bad outcomes just due to the response time of enemies being a bit too quick. Those flaws aside, if you're a fan of horror games, I highly recommend giving Circus of TimTim a try. It's easy to pick up and play, but it has the potential to keep you on the edge of your seat the entire time. It's got a good price tag and it's definitely worth the support. I am very proud of what 2 developers were able to accomplish here. It is clear that they have a lot of love for the genre, they just need to take some more risks next time to truly set themselves apart. The game, with all the praise that I've given it, feels too safe. Something that you wouldn't necessarily be missing out on too much if you decided to skip and are a veteran to the horror gaming genre, even if I still do believe that it is definitely worth a shot. FC was also just not too pleased with the ending. Maybe there are multiple endings and we just haven't figured it out yet, but there needs to be a sequel or something at the very least, according to him. I never made it there myself, so I wouldn't know, but I felt like pointing it out, especially since it's the second game FC has had that he has had a problem with its ending in some regard. The second horror game in a row, actually. The indie horrors seem to do very well with build-up, suspense, and situational horror, but when it comes to rounding out their stories, in the end, many of them can fall pretty flat. Nothing horrendous or anything, but just not great either. Would you play it? Let me know in the comments below, and for more news, reviews, and whatever we choose, stay tuned to Nerdsfeed. Have a great day, thank you.